Imagine for a moment that you are suspended in the crystal-clear blue waters of the Pacific, watching the perfect predator glide effortlessly beneath your feet. The great white shark is a masterpiece of biological engineering that has dominated these depths for millions of years with terrifying grace. Its silhouette is the ultimate symbol of power in the ocean, striking a primal chord of fear and respect in every living thing. You watch it move with that distinct, confident swagger that comes from knowing it has absolutely no natural enemies in this vast, watery world. But as you blink, the shark simply dissolves into the blue, leaving nothing but an empty, aching void where a monster once swam. This is not a magic trick, but a glimpse into a very real and unsettling future that is rapidly approaching our oceans. We tend to think of extinction as a loud, fiery event, but the death of the ocean's kings will likely be silent. We are witnessing the beginning of a vanishing act that will strip the seas of their most iconic and majestic hunters. The throne of the apex predator is being vacated, and the silence left behind is far more terrifying than any set of jaws. The disappearance of these giants is not just a tragedy for nature documentaries, but a signal that the fundamental rules of the game have changed. Creatures like sharks, whales, and bluefin tuna are what scientists call case strategists, meaning they invest heavily in a few high-maintenance offspring. They grow slowly, they breed rarely, and they require massive amounts of energy just to exist from one day to the next. In a stable world, this strategy makes them untouchable kings, but in a rapidly changing ocean, it turns them into walking dead. When the water warms and the food webs fracture, these expensive biological machines are the very first to run out of fuel. They cannot adapt their breeding cycles fast enough to keep up with the chaos we are injecting into the climate. While they starve and fade away, they leave behind an ocean that looks deceptively peaceful on the surface. It is a slow-motion collapse that wipes out the top of the pyramid while leaving the base strangely intact. The tragedy is that their evolutionary perfection has become their ultimate sentence of death. Now, cast your mind forward a few decades and imagine diving into this new, altered ocean where the giants have finally gone. The first thing you notice is not what is there, but the overwhelming, oppressive sense of what is missing. The water is still blue and the sun still creates those dancing patterns of light on the sand, but the energy is wrong. The thrill of danger that usually electrifies the open ocean has been replaced by a heavy, stagnant boredom. There are no shadows circling in the distance to make your heart rate spike or your breath catch. The ocean has become a ghost town, a vast and lonely haunted house where the ghosts are simply memories of teeth and speed. It feels safe, certainly, but it is a safety that feels deeply unnatural and unsettling to the human psyche. We are hardwired to fear monsters in the deep, and without them, the ocean feels like a body without a soul. This is the ghost ocean, a transitional realm waiting for new nightmares to be born. The silence of this underwater world is perhaps the most disturbing aspect of all, as the usual symphony of life has been muted. The clicks of sperm whales and the low-frequency hum of migrating schools are gone, replaced by the dull hiss of dead water. This acoustic void is a direct result of the collapse of the complex social networks that once crisscrossed the globe. Without the chatter of intelligent mammals and the rush of panicked schools of fish, the soundscape is flat. It is like walking through a bustling city that has been suddenly and completely abandoned by its inhabitants. You strain your ears for a sign of life, but the only sound is the bubbling of your own regulator. The darkness below seems deeper and more absolute without the bioluminescent flashes of fleeing prey breaking the gloom. It is a sensory deprivation tank on a planetary scale, isolating you in a world that has lost its voice. This silence is not peaceful. It is the heavy, pregnant silence of a held breath. Underlying this eerie stillness is a chemical transformation that is quietly making the water hostile to the old nobility of the sea. The ocean is absorbing carbon dioxide and becoming more acidic, turning the water into a sour soup that eats away at the old order. This acidification attacks the very foundations of the food web, making it harder for traditional prey to form their shells and skeletons. As the basement of the ecosystem crumbles, the penthouse collapses, bringing the mighty hunters crashing down into oblivion. The water itself has turned against the creatures that once thrived in it, burning their gills and stifling their reproduction. It is a hostile takeover by chemistry, forcing out the biological aristocrats that can no longer pay the metabolic rent. The environment is selecting for a new kind of toughness, one that has nothing to do with size or strength. Only the hardy, the slimy, and the simple can hope to survive in this stinging, heated future. The water is clearing the stage, wiping the slate clean for a grotesque new act. Nature, as we know, absolutely abhors a vacuum, and this emptiness in the ocean is a pressure cooker waiting to explode. The ecological niches that were once occupied by sharks and whales are now gaping wounds in the fabric of the ocean. There is a tremendous amount of unconsumed energy drifting around, waiting for something, anything, to evolve enough to eat it. This pent-up biological demand creates a powerful suction that will pull new forms of life up from the bottom. Evolution is already working feverishly in the shadows, testing out new designs to fill the void left by the vanished kings. It is a chaotic, unregulated gold rush where the only rule is to eat and reproduce as fast as possible. The throne is empty, and there are millions of contenders quietly sharpening their weapons in the muck. The tension in the water is palpable, a feeling of imminent arrival that makes the skin crawl. Something is coming to fill the silence, and it will not be the noble hunters we are used to. The horror of this situation lies in the realization that the new rulers will likely be everything we find repulsive and alien. We have spent centuries romanticizing the shark and the whale, respecting them as worthy adversaries or gentle giants. But the creatures that thrive in warm, acidic, oxygen-starved waters are the ones we typically try to ignore. They are the scavengers, the slimes, the mindless consumers that have been waiting in the wings for millions of years. They do not have the grace of a dolphin or the majesty of a tuna. They have only hunger and resilience. They are the cockroaches of the sea, the survivors that crawl out of the rubble when the beautiful architecture falls. We are trading a kingdom of lions for a kingdom of rats, and the transition will be gruesome. The romantic era of the ocean is ending, and the era of the pest is beginning. The ocean is about to get very crowded very quickly, with things that do not belong in the light. As we float in this silent, empty blue, we must prepare ourselves for the inevitable invasion that is bubbling up from the deep. The era of the ghost ocean will be short-lived, a brief pause before the new cast of characters storms the stage. We can already see the vanguard of this new army drifting in the currents, mindless and numerous. They are soft, they are stinging, and they are completely indifferent to the rules that govern the old world. The water is getting warmer, the oxygen is dropping, and the perfect conditions for a gelatinous nightmare are falling into place. The kings are dead, and their graves are being paved over by a writhing, pulsating carpet of life. Look closely at the shadows deepening below you, because the void is starting to move. The silence is about to be broken by the sound of a billion wet, squelching bodies rising to claim their prize. That heavy, pregnant silence of the ghost ocean was never going to last. Nature's vacuums are violent, and the one left by the vanished kings is now being filled with a speed and a strangeness that defies belief. Imagine taking that same dive again, but this time the water feels wrong on your skin. It's thicker, heavier, and it clings to you with a faint, almost greasy texture. The clear blue has been replaced by a murky, shimmering soup, and you realize with a jolt of horror that you aren't swimming in water anymore. You are swimming through life itself. The first wave of successors has arrived, and they aren't noble hunters or cunning strategists. They are the gelatinous nightmares that have been patiently waiting in the evolutionary wings for their moment to conquer the world. The age of fish and mammals is over. The age of slime has begun, and it is a suffocating, all-consuming tide of primitive life. So who are these new masters of the sea? Look around you in this thick, soupy world. They are the descendants of today's jellyfish, salps, and ctenophores, the squishy, unassuming drifters we barely give a second thought. Without the turtles, tuna, and other predators that once kept their numbers in check, their populations have exploded on a planetary scale. These are not individual creatures anymore. They are a biological phenomenon, a single, global mass of pulsating jelly that has fundamentally changed the texture of the ocean. They thrive in the warm, acidic, and oxygen-poor water that killed off the old guard, their simple bodies perfectly adapted for this new, hostile world. They have no brains, no bones, and no blood, just a primitive nerve net and an insatiable passive hunger. The horror of these new rulers is not their malice, but their complete and utter mindlessness. They don't hunt you. They simply bump into you and you dissolve. This is the reality of the slime ocean, a world where the very medium you move through is also the predator. Every direction you turn, you are surrounded by a nearly invisible curtain of stinging cells and digestive enzymes. The fear is not of a single, identifiable monster, but of the environment itself turning against you. Can you imagine the sheer psychological terror of that? It's like being lost in a fog that is slowly trying to eat you. A silent, featureless enemy that offers no target to fight and no direction to flee. The water itself has become a weapon, a living matrix of death that is patient, pervasive, and utterly inescapable. This is a new kind of predation, one that is not based on speed or strength, but on overwhelming, suffocating presence. The jellyfish apocalypse isn't a war. It's a slow, inexorable drowning in a sea of hungry ghosts. But evolution rarely stops at simple solutions, and even in this gelatinous soup, an arms race is taking place. The most terrifying predators of this era may not be the lone jellyfish, but their colonial cousins, the siphonophores. Today, we know them as the Portuguese man-o'-war, a strange creature that is not one animal, but a floating city of specialized clones working together. Now, imagine that concept scaled up to a monstrous new level. With no predators and an endless supply of soupy food, these colonies could evolve to become vast, drifting nets, hundreds of meters long. They are living walls of death, silent and nearly transparent, that drift across the open ocean like ghostly curtains. They don't need to chase their prey. They just need to exist, and the currents will do the rest, delivering a constant stream of food into their collective mouths. These living walls would be the apex predators of the slime ocean, a masterpiece of passive, energy-efficient killing. Each part of the colony is a specialist. Some clones form the giant sail, others become the digestive stomachs, and millions upon millions of them evolve into nothing but dangling, hair-like tentacles loaded with paralyzing venom. They would be the largest biological structures on the planet, yet they would remain almost invisible until it was too late. A creature swimming in this future ocean wouldn't even see the threat. It would just feel a sudden, sharp sting, then another and another, as it becomes hopelessly entangled in a transparent web of pain and paralysis. The victim would be digested externally, slowly broken down into a nutrient slurry that is absorbed by the colossal, mindless entity that doesn't even know it's eating. It is the ultimate expression of nature's cold, indifferent cruelty. The horror of this gelatinous dynasty is a zombie apocalypse for the ocean, a world ruled by unthinking, ravenous hordes. A zombie doesn't hate you, it doesn't have a plan. It just shambles forward and consumes. That is the essence of this new marine ecosystem. There is no strategy, no intelligence, no spark of recognizable life in these predators. They are just automated feeding machines, a tide of flesh that reproduces and spreads with a viral efficiency. Their victory is not a triumph of superior skill, but a triumph of sheer, dumb numbers. They have won by being too simple to fail, too basic to be outcompete in a world that has been stripped of its complexity. They are the ultimate survivors, the last life forms you would expect to see ruling a planet, and that is precisely what makes their reign so profoundly terrifying to contemplate. This new reality also creates a bizarre and twisted food web, a caricature of the one it replaced. Instead of krill being eaten by whales, you have endless clouds of tiny crustaceans being eaten by endless clouds of jellyfish. And what eats the jellyfish? Even larger, more specialized jellyfish, of course. It is a food pyramid built entirely out of slime, a wobbly, inefficient tower of gelatinous cannibals. Some creatures might evolve to feed on this abundant new resource, developing tough hides and specialized mouths to slurp down the jelly. But for the most part, the energy just circulates in a closed, slimy loop. The system is stable in its own grotesque way, a low-energy world of slow, mindless consumption. It's a stagnant, boring dystopia, an ocean caught in a state of suspended animation. But even this gelatinous empire cannot last forever, for it is built on a fatal flaw. This entire dynasty is soft, squishy, and utterly defenseless against a different kind of threat. An ocean dominated by soft bodies is an ocean just begging for a new set of jaws to evolve and tear it all apart. For millions of years, the primary evolutionary pressure was to escape the crushing bite of a shark or the sonar-guided attack of a whale. Now, the main challenge is simply not getting dissolved. But somewhere in the murky depths, a new kind of hunter is stirring. It is something faster, something smarter, and something with teeth. The age of slime is just a temporary, messy chapter in the Earth's long story. And the things that are coming to end, it will be far more intelligent and far more terrifying than any mindless jelly. If the slime ocean was a mindless nightmare of dissolving flesh, the era that follows is something far more chilling. The awakening of a cold, calculating intellect. The gelatinous hordes were never going to rule forever. They were simply a vast, floating buffet table waiting for a diner with the wits to exploit it. And rising from the depths to claim this prize is a lineage that has been waiting in the shadows for hundreds of millions of years. The cephalopods, squids, octopuses, and cuttlefish, are about to inherit the Earth. Unlike the slow-breeding whales and sharks they replace, these creatures live fast, die young, and mutate with terrifying speed. They are the ultimate biological opportunists. And in a world devoid of their traditional predators, they are free to grow, adapt, and conquer with a freedom they haven't tasted since the Paleozoic era. The slime is not a threat to them. It is fuel for their ascent. Imagine a creature that combines the problem-solving intelligence of a primate with the alien physiology of a mollusk. In the past, giant squid were forced to hide in the crushing darkness of the abyss, terrified of the sperm whales that hunted them. But the whales are gone now, starved out of existence, and the prison doors of the deep have been flung wide open. The giants are coming up to the surface. Evolution is no longer forcing them to hide. It is encouraging them to dominate. We are likely to see a return to gigantism that rivals the legendary kraken of folklore, but with a horrifying new twist. Without the need for deep-sea camouflage, their skin might toughen, perhaps even seeing a return of the external shells their ancestors lost millions of years ago. Imagine a 10-meter squid armored in biomineral plating, a living tank patrolling the open waves. But the true terror of this new age isn't physical size. It's the evolution of behavior. Today, most squids are solitary hunters or form simple shoals, but intelligence thrives on cooperation. In this future ocean, we could see the emergence of the wolfpack squid, creatures that have learned that 10 brains are better than one. Picture a pod of massive Humboldt squid descendants, moving with military precision, their bodies flashing complex patterns of light and color to communicate in real time. They aren't just reacting to prey. They are planning. They flank, they corral, they feint. This is a level of tactical warfare that the ocean hasn't seen since the days of the killer whale, but now it is being conducted by invertebrates with beaks and tentacles. They are rewriting the rules of engagement. The sensory experience of this ocean is radically different from the silent slime ocean. It is a world of dazzling, hypnotic light shows that serve as both language and weapon. These pack hunters use their chromatophores, the color-changing cells in their skin, not just to hide, but to mesmerize. Imagine floating on the surface and seeing a rhythmic, strobing pattern of neon blue and deep red pulsing from the darkness below. It's beautiful, almost entrancing, until you realize it's a lure designed to overload your visual cortex just before the strike. This is psychological warfare. They are hacking the nervous systems of their prey with light, stunning them into confusion before the tentacles lash out. It is a disco of death where the lights are the last thing you ever see. The horror here shifts from the fear of the unknown to the fear of being known. When you look into the eye of a shark, you see instinct. When you look into the eye of a giant octopus, you see calculation. There is a distinct feeling of being assessed, weighed, and measured by an intelligence that is profoundly alien to our own. These new lords of the sea don't just kill out of reflex. They solve the puzzle of their prey. If you were to encounter them, they wouldn't just attack. They would test your defenses, probe for weaknesses, and learn from your reactions. It is the terror of being trapped in a cage with a creature that is thinking faster than you are, a creature that looks at you not as a fellow being, but as a complex problem to be unraveled and consumed. This intelligence, however, is completely devoid of what we would recognize as humanity or empathy. It is a cold, wet intellect born of deep time and alien biology. Mammals, for all their violence, share a certain emotional kinship with us. We understand fear, anger, and protection of the young. But a squid pack operates on a different operating system entirely. There is no mercy, no hesitation, just an efficient, algorithmic processing of the environment. They are like biological machines that have achieved sentience, and their rule over the ocean is absolute and terrifyingly efficient. They have turned the chaotic, messy ocean into a surveillance state where nothing moves without being seen by a camera-like eye. As these invertebrate empires expand, they begin to farm the very slime that preceded them. We might see scenarios where giant cephalopods herd vast shoals of jellyfish like cattle, protecting them from other predators only to harvest them when hunger strikes. It is a grotesque parody of human agriculture, played out in the open ocean. This mastery over their environment marks the transition from simple predators to dominant rulers. They are not just living in the ocean, they are shaping it to suit their needs. The chaotic, wild sea is being tamed by tentacles, turned into a garden of jelly and flesh managed by tentacled overlords. But nature has a twisted sense of humor, and even the smartest, most adaptable rulers are not safe from the endless turning of the wheel. The reign of the squid seems invincible. They are smart, fast, and armored, but they have forgotten one crucial thing. They are creatures of the water, bound to the liquid realm. And while they were busy conquering the waves, something else was watching from the cliffs and the skies. The descendants of the dinosaurs, the birds, have been looking down at this bounty with hungry eyes. The squid have become the kings of the water, but in doing so, they have made themselves the perfect prize for a new terror that is about to plunge from the heavens. The kraken wakes, but the rock is waiting. Just as the cephalopods are securing their grip on the underwater world, a shadow falls across the surface. The squid have become the masters of the deep, convinced that the throne is theirs, but they have forgotten to look up. The next wave of predators isn't evolving from the bottom up. It is plunging from the top down. The skies have always been a nursery for potential ocean conquerors, and now, with the ice caps gone and the coastlines drowned, the seabirds are running out of land. Evolution is forcing them back into the water, not just as visitors, but as permanent residents. We are witnessing the birth of the feathered leviathans, creatures that started as penguins or gannets, but are shedding their last ties to the earth to become the new whales of this drowned world. Imagine a creature that has completely lost the ability to walk. The awkward waddle of the penguin is gone, replaced by a body that is pure hydrodynamic perfection. This is the shark penguin, a biological torpedo that rivals the great white shark in shape, but exceeds it in terrifying energy. These aren't the cute, tuxedo-wearing birds of nature documentaries. They are 12-foot-long missiles of muscle and fat, driven by a metabolism that runs hot and fast. They have traded their wings for rigid, bone-crushing fins and their feathers for a sleek, seal-like hide. They are no longer birds in any meaningful sense. They are warm-blooded killing machines that treat the ocean not as a place to visit, but as a hunting ground they own completely. The true horror of these creatures lies in their biology. Birds possess a respiratory system that is vastly superior to that of mammals. While a whale has to hold its breath and ration its oxygen, a bird's lungs allow for a continuous, one-way flow of air. If you scale that efficiency up to the size of a killer whale, you get a predator with virtually limitless stamina. They don't tire. They don't slow down. They are hyperactive, frantic hunters that can chase prey for miles without breaking a sweat. In a world of sluggish, cold-blooded reptiles and invertebrates, the shark penguin is a creature on overdrive, a biological buzzsaw that cuts through the water with a manic, twitchy energy that is unsettling to watch. When you look into the face of this new predator, you see something deeply wrong. We associate beaks with pecking and chirping, not with dismemberment. But these creatures have serrated, saw-like edges on their bills, designed not to swallow fish whole, but to shear through flesh and bone like jagged scissors. Their eyes are the dead, unblinking eyes of a reptile, devoid of the curiosity you see in a seal or the intelligence of a squid. There is a blankness there, a robotic intensity that makes them feel less like animals and more like guided weapons. They hit their prey at 40 miles an hour, the impact alone enough to shatter spines, before the beak finishes the job. It is a brutal, smash-and-grab style of predation that leaves the water filled with blood and feathers. The arrival of these avian monsters turns the surface of the ocean into a war zone. The squid, masters of the deep and the dark, are suddenly forced to defend their new territory against an enemy they cannot intimidate. You can't flash hypnotic lights at a creature that moves faster than you can think. The squid rely on stealth and calculation. The birds rely on brute force and speed. It is a clash of styles, the assassin versus the berserker. The ocean surface becomes a terrifying interface where tentacles reach up to drag birds down, and serrated beaks plunge down to rip tentacles apart. It is a chaotic, violent struggle for the top spot, with neither side willing to yield. This conflict creates a terrifying duality in the ocean's danger zones. If you are in the deep, you are being watched by the silent, calculating eyes of the squid packs. If you are near the surface, you are being hunted by the frantic, high-speed violence of the giant birds. There is no safe zone, no middle ground where a smaller creature can catch its breath. The pressure is constant, coming from above and below. The ocean has become a grinder, chewing up anything that can't pick a side or find a hiding spot. It is a high-energy ecosystem fueled by the desperate struggle between two completely different evolutionary lineages. We often think of birds as delicate, hollow-boned creatures of the air, but the ocean has a way of adding weight to everything it touches. These new marine giants will be heavy, dense, and powerful. They might even begin to give birth to live young at sea, severing their final link to the land entirely. At that point, the transformation is complete. The sky is just a memory. The ocean is their only reality. They are the new dragons of the sea, breathing air but ruling the waves with an iron beak. The concept of a bird has been twisted into a nightmare shape, proving once again that nature is not sentimental. It will take a beautiful design and weaponize it if that's what survival requires. But while the squid and the birds tear each other apart in the open water, a different kind of story is unfolding on the ocean floor. The frantic energy of the surface war doesn't reach the bottom. Down there, in the eternal crushing dark, the strategy isn't speed, and it isn't intelligence. It is patience. The things that live in the mud have been watching the chaos above for millions of years, and they have learned that the best way to win the game is not to play it at all. While the titans clash above, the floor itself is beginning to wake up. The trap is being set, and it has been waiting for a very, very long time. While the surface of the ocean has become a violent arena of speed and feathers, a very different kind of nightmare is quietly assembling itself in the dark. Far below the crashing waves and the screaming birds, down in the crushing silence of the abyss, the evolutionary strategy isn't about being fast. It's about being invisible. The ocean floor has always been a place of scavengers and ambush predators. But in this future world, the concept of the ambush is taken to a geological extreme. Here, the predators don't chase you. They don't even look at you. They simply become the environment and wait for you to make a mistake. Welcome to the domain of the trapmouths, where the rock you land on might just be the last thing you ever touch. In the absence of the colorful, vibrant coral reefs of the past, bleached into oblivion millions of years ago, a new kind of structure has risen to take their place. These aren't reefs made of limestone and polyps. They are reefs made of meat and bone. The bottom-dwelling fish of today, like stonefish, stargazers, and frogfish, have taken the concept of camouflage and scaled it up to monstrous proportions. Imagine a creature the size of a minivan that has evolved to look exactly like a jagged pile of rocks. Its skin is encrusted with fake barnacles. Its eyes are hidden deep within folds of flesh that mimic crevices, and its mouth is a cavernous trapdoor that spans the entire width of its body. It is a living reef, a predator that has abandoned movement entirely in exchange for the ultimate disguise. The horror of the deep is usually depicted as a chase, a frantic swim away from a monster with gnashing teeth. But the horror here is the stillness. These creatures operate on a timescale that makes a sloth look hyperactive. They might move only once every few months, shifting their bulk just enough to settle into a new current. Their metabolism is so slow it's barely registering as life at all. They are essentially biological landmines, waiting in a state of suspended animation for years, perhaps even decades, for a single vibration to trigger the trap. This extreme patience is terrifying because it feels less like biology and more like geology. You are not being hunted by an animal. You are being waited out by a rock. Imagine navigating this underwater landscape in a submersible. You shine your lights on the sea floor, and everything looks dead, gray, and still. You see mounds of sediment, jagged outcrops, and drifting silt. But then your sensors pick up a faint rhythmic thrumming, a heartbeat where there should be none. You realize with a creeping dread that the topography itself is watching you. The cave over there is a throat. The seaweed swaying in the current is a sensory lure. The entire landscape is a minefield of mouths, and you have no way of knowing which patch of sand is safe and which one is a trigger plate for a high-speed engulfment. It breeds a paranoia that is far deeper than the fear of a shark. It is the fear of the ground beneath your feet. This sedentary lifestyle is fueled by the carnage happening miles above. The war between the giant squid and the shark penguins creates a constant rain of biological debris. Severed tentacles, bird carcasses, and scraps of flesh that drift slowly down into the dark. This marine snow is the manna that feeds the living reefs. They don't need to hunt because the war upstairs delivers the food right to their mouths. They are the ultimate profiteers of the chaos, growing fat and monstrous on the fallout of a battle they never have to fight. It is a gruesome efficiency. The violence of the active predators feeds the patience of the passive ones. But occasionally something live comes down. A wounded squid, fleeing the surface war, might seek refuge in the darkness of the bottom, thinking it has escaped the serrated beaks of the birds. It sees a quiet, sheltered canyon and settles down to recover. It doesn't notice that the canyon walls are slightly soft, or that the floor has a strange, fleshy texture. It feels safe for a moment, enveloped in the silence. And then, in a fraction of a second, the canyon snaps shut. The water displacement alone is enough to stun the squid, and before it can fire a single jet of water, it is swallowed whole by the landscape it tried to hide in. The trap resets, the silt settles, and the floor goes back to being a rock. This ecosystem of traps represents a disturbing endpoint for evolution in the deep. It suggests that intelligence, speed, and complexity are just expensive fads, and that the ultimate survival strategy is simply to become a mouth that waits. There is something deeply nihilistic about these creatures. They have stripped away everything that makes life recognizably alive: curiosity, movement, social interaction, and distilled existence down to a single mechanical reflex. Open, close, digest. They are the living embodiment of entropy, the heat death of the biological world where everything eventually slows down and stops moving, waiting for the end. And yet, even in this silent, trap-filled graveyard, the cycle isn't quite finished. For hundreds of millions of years, the ocean has tried to build the perfect killing machine. It has experimented with armor, with speed, with poison, and with traps. But no matter how many times the world ends, no matter how strange the creatures become, there is one shape that the ocean always seems to dream of. It is a shape we know well, a ghost that haunts the blueprint of marine life. And as the millions of years tick by, that ghost is starting to manifest again, rising from the most unlikely of origins to reclaim its crown. After millions of years of chaos, slime, and war, the ocean eventually settles down. The frantic battles between the bird whales and the squid kings burn themselves out, and the ecosystem begins to stabilize. And as the dust settles, something remarkable happens. If you were to dive into this future ocean, 200 million years from now, you might gasp in recognition. Gliding through the blue is a creature that looks impossible. It has a sleek, gray, torpedo-shaped body. It has a triangular dorsal fin cutting the water. It has a mouth full of serrated, triangular teeth. It looks exactly like the great white shark we watched vanish in the first act. But look closer. This isn't a shark at all. It might be a descendant of the penguin, a reptile that returned to the sea, or even a highly derived mollusk that grew a skeleton. But the shape is identical. This is the ultimate punchline of evolution. the concept of the neo-shark. Nature doesn't care about creativity, it cares about physics. And in the dense, heavy medium of water, there is only one perfect shape for a high-speed predator. It is the shape that the ichthyosaurs discovered in the Triassic, the shape that sharks perfected in the Cretaceous, and the shape that dolphins adopted in the Cenozoic. It is a hydrodynamic inevitability. No matter what animal starts the journey, be it a lizard, a mammal, or a bird, if it spends enough time hunting in the open ocean, the water will eventually sculpt it into this singular, lethal form. The shark is not just an animal. It is a mathematical solution to the problem of killing in water. This realization brings with it a strange mixture of comfort and horror. Comfort because it proves that life is resilient, that order will always emerge from chaos. Horror because it highlights just how replaceable everything is. The great white shark wasn't special because of its lineage. It was just the current tenant of a very specific apartment. And now that it's gone, a new tenant has moved in wearing the same uniform, doing the same job with the same terrifying efficiency. The names change, the DNA changes, but the role remains eternal. The ocean demands a king, and it will twist any available biology until it fits the crown. So, who wins the Game of Thrones in the end? Everyone and no one. The cycle we have just witnessed, from the empty ghost ocean to the slime, to the squid, to the birds, and back to the shark, is not a straight line. It is a circle, a relentless, grinding wheel that turns over hundreds of millions of years. We are just blinking in and out of existence during one brief turn of that wheel. We stress about the fragility of our specific ecosystem, mourning the loss of our nature. But the ocean doesn't mourn. It just waits. It has seen this play out a dozen times before we arrived, and it will see it play out a dozen times after we are gone. There is a profound humility in realizing that the monsters of the future are just echoes of the past. The nightmares we imagined, the giant squids, the trapmouth reefs, are just temporary experiments, chaotic sketches before the master artist returns to the classic design. The neo-shark is the closing bracket of the story, the proof that some things are simply too perfect to stay dead. It is a reminder that while species are fragile, the machinery of life is indestructible. The water will always be blue, the depths will always be dark, and there will always be a shadow gliding through the deep, looking for something to eat. As we pull back from this journey, floating up from the future timeline and returning to the present, the ocean we see today looks different. It feels less like a permanent fixture and more like a snapshot. That shark swimming in the documentary isn't just a fish. It's a placeholder. The whales breaching are just holding the spot for the penguins of the future. The jellyfish drifting by are waiting for their turn to rule. The entire ocean is a fluid, shifting stage where the actors are constantly being fired and rehired, but the script remains exactly the same. It is a story written in blood and salt that has no beginning and no end. The final image of our journey is not one of destruction, but of indifferent beauty. Imagine a sunset on this future Earth. The sun is a little brighter, the continents have shifted into new shapes, and the constellations in the sky are unrecognizable. But down in the water, the scene is perfectly familiar. A dorsal fin breaks the surface, cutting a wake through the gold-tinted waves. It is a perfect killing machine, patrolling a world that has completely forgotten the word human. We are gone, our cities are dust, our plastic is buried in the strata of the rock. But the shark remains. The cycle is complete, and the ocean continues to roll on, deep, dark, and eternal. So, to answer the question, who will be the new predators? The answer is simple. The new predators will be the same as the old ones, just wearing different masks. The face of the killer changes, but the hunger remains the same. The ocean is a relentless engine of predation, a beautiful, terrible machine that will keep running long after we have turned off the lights. Sleep well tonight, knowing that whatever happens to us, the monsters will be just fine.